Let's talk about what a good outbound DM looks like. So you have one shot to make this work. With an outbound DM, it's really hard to double text them. You know this. Unlike with email, where you can start a new thread. Your face is also attached to it. Your name is attached to it. So your profile and who you are also matters. And hopefully, if you're following all our other advice, that's going to work in your favor as opposed to be a disadvantage like it is for most people. That said, ultimately, the message itself matters. A couple of things you want to keep in mind as you write that DM. Number one, you want to make sure that the DM is really short. It should feel like a text, 2-3 lines tops. If you're doing anything longer than that, it's too much. You want to be very careful about what you're saying and keep it very short and sweet. Number two, you want to keep it fairly casual. Anything overly formal feels like a pitch, feels like a stranger trying to talk to you. You want to make it feel like you're somebody who is friendly, already kind of knows them. Try to keep it somewhat casual, use casual language as much as you can. If you have public information and you've started a conversation in the comments or from some sort of like post, you can always transition that into a DM. Those tend to work really well because you've already started the conversation. You're just kind of taking it private. And so that's another great thing to do, is just to respond to them in a post or a comment and then use that as a permission opener to start DMing them and taking the conversation private. Make sure that the message is about them. It's never about you and your product or what you do. It's always about them and their potential problems and how they're thinking about solving it. Always think about selling the next step, which is in when you're sending the first DM, just getting them to respond. It's not about getting them to book time or to buy your product or anything along those lines. It's just getting them to respond. And so really you want to think about, okay, how do I ask them a question, or how do I give them something which will get them to just want to acknowledge the message and respond to me? And you want to make sure that you have a reason to reach out to this buyer. If you can't think of a good reason and they look the same as every other buyer, it's probably a sign that you maybe should be messaging them because it's not relevant. So let me show you some examples of good messages, or at least what I believe are good messages that I've sent previously. Some of these have responses, some of them don't. With everything in outbound, it's not 100%, but I'll show you what that looks like. So here, for example, I saw somebody following our company page, and I happen to know his founders. I don't know him personally, and kind of reached out and shared a helpful guide. So I'm kind of breaking my rule earlier about sharing links in that first message, but in this case, it was a helpful resource. And I already knew that he was interested in a certain topic and us. And so I sort of braved it and I shared a link. And this actually ended up turning into a first demo. This one, video message. We'll talk about video messages later. But in this case, I sent them a video message, kept it really personal, and just talked about problems generally. And then he kind of checked us out and we turned that into a demo. Brandon over here, he responded to one of my posts in the comments. So I said, thank you for the comment. And then I tried to start a conversation. I just asked him for coffee since we were in the same city. The goal was to get him to respond and turn that into a meeting. This is a message where we already had a conversation going in the comments in response to one of our posts, and then turned that into a meeting, and Tori's actually a customer now. And you'll see that it's very, very casual. Like all these messages, I'm speaking to them like I'm a friend effectively. And you can do that if you build that rapport in public, in comments and posts. One last example, I saw somebody and over here talking about, or essentially finding an opportunity. And I asked them like, hey, like, do you find a lot of opportunities like this on LinkedIn? And hopefully the answer is yes. And then I could segue that into a conversation about us. And this one didn't work, didn't get a response, but notice how messages are pretty short. I mean, I guess the link took up a bunch of space over here to this, but it's just a single question. So these are examples of how I send messages. They look very different from these kinds of messages, which are large walls of text, very impersonal, largely uninvited. And that's how I'd love for you to start thinking about DMing people as well.